Hi everyone, how are you doing today? Well, I was determined to start on time this time, so let me turn down my phone volume because I have my chat pulled up on the phone, but hearing myself in echo is not helping. Okay, yeah, so we are live. I have figured out how to get my webcam to show my desk, which is really cool. This is not my final setup, but I thought I would go ahead and try it out because I'd like to show books and not just my computer screen for some of these live streams. So going to start by... Oh, hi Buck. Cool. I know we have at least one other person joining, so I'm going to just go over what I'm reading right now, but this is super informal, so feel free to, drop comments, questions, tell me about what you're reading. And I also have this book tag I might do, but we'll see if there's any interest or time to do that. So starting with... Oh, hi Bosh. Wow, it's really early for you. Thanks for joining. So I'm going to start by talking about what I'm reading right now. And I'll actually start with these other books. So I'm currently rereading The Idiot by Dostoyevsky. And very slowly, this focus is something. Anyway, I'm still in the beginning part, have not got very far. One of the bloggers I follow was going to read this for the first time for the Classics Club, and then I remembered I have it on the Classics Club list to reread, along with this book called The Notebooks. So you might have seen this on Instagram, but I've had this book for a year or two now. It was a Christmas gift, and what it is basically the original concepts that Dostoyevsky had for The Idiot. And it has an introduction. Oh, there's the sticky notes, doubling as a bookmark. So it has a really nice introduction, and then it's got his 8 plans. Not sure if this is focusing, but anyway, it gives you his 8 versions of the story before his final version. So yeah, I'm still pretty early in this as well, but I wanted to start reading it while I was rereading this, just so that I kind of get back into the context and not to read this just afterwards. Oh, cool. So Buck says he's reading Brothers Karamazov. Yeah, that one, I think it's already been 6 years since I read it. That is a very, very meaty novel, but also really good. I really loved The Idiot especially. So I'll just read some highlights from the introduction. So Dostoyevsky was kind of in a crisis when he wrote The Idiot. He had just got married and he was in kind of poor circumstances, and he was also addicted to gambling. So he and his wife left Russia and were traveling around Europe. And not only was he in reduced circumstances and gambling, but he was also suffering, I think, from epilepsy, if I'm remembering correctly. He was having health issues, similar to the main character of The Idiot. And it was kind of interesting. So he went around and to various countries. He didn't like Switzerland. It says that he could not really relate to the other Russian immigrants in Geneva, and also that there was a lot of anti-monarchy talk and like revolutionary ideas, and he just didn't relate to that having had experience in that earlier, which I didn't know. I really enjoyed the way this introduction talks about his writing process. And for the idiot, he didn't really have a solid idea of who he wanted the main character, Prince Mishkin, to be. In fact, his main idea for the novel, that the prince was this perfect human being or Christ-like figure, that was not the original idea. So he actually used an iterative process to write the idiot, and it took him many years and versions to arrive at the novel as it is today. So I thought that was really cool, because I know that having done some attempts at writing in the past, some people, like, they come up with a very well-crafted outline before they start and try to have everything figured out in advance, and other people just kind of plunge into the writing. But I guess this is kind of somewhere in the middle, because it's not like you're just writing stream of conscious. He goes back and iterates over themes and characters. But anyway, yeah, we are considering here a great novel and a great novelist, and the notes show convincingly not only that Dostoyevsky was trying out many routes, but that more than one route could have taken him to the same destination. I really liked that line that this author called out, this editor. It reminded me of computer programming, where there's usually multiple ways to solve a problem, and you just have to choose one in the end, but you can use the iterative process to find the best one for what you're doing. I was surprised to hear that was what he did for this novel, but it was interesting. So yeah, I'm only on page 10, which is pretty sad, but already a very interesting and helpful book. So that was a longish overview of that. Yes, I started rereading The Idiot, and I do like the cover. This is the painting that the prince sees in one scene of the story, the painting of Christ. What's it called? Christ in the Tomb, 1521, by Hans Holbein. So I like that they chose a picture that is from the story. Yeah, I only made it through like chapter 1 so far. But it's not for any lack of interest. I'm just reading multiple things right now. But I am looking forward to getting back into that. Okay, so the book I'm really focusing on right now is The Razor's Edge by Somerset Maugham. You might remember I've mentioned it many times. I did a video on The Painted Veil, but I'm kind of mildly obsessed with that book. This one, by the same author, tells the story of Larry Darrell, an attractive and enigmatic American who forsakes the comforts of bourgeois society to live a life dedicated to the pursuit of truth and meaning. That's kind of vague. Basically, there's this young man who comes back from the war after the First World War, and he's seen some pretty disturbing scenarios there that he can't really talk about to anybody. And he's engaged to this beautiful Isabel. This all takes place in America, by the way, even though Maugham is British. So when he comes back, his fiancée and him are on completely different wavelengths. He is on this newly found spiritual journey in the search for truth, and she just wants to get married and have a family and just build the kind of life that she sees around her in her friends, and it's like the American dream, if you will, except from a female perspective, or a female perspective. So you can imagine that causes a lot of conflict in their relationship. They're still very much attracted to each other and in love, but Larry does not want to become tied down to a specific job. He doesn't want to, just get into the daily grind with all the other guys in an office and eke out his living. He's a reader and a dreamer, and he wants to find ultimate truth. So that's how the novel kind of starts. Hi, Nara. Thanks for joining us. I don't know if I said your name right, but let me know if I didn't. So we're going over some books that I am currently reading. So I talked about The Idiot, just very briefly, and the notebooks for The Idiot published by, I think this is Dover Publications. And this just gives the context for this novel and talks about, Dostoyevsky's gambling addiction, his health troubles, and his difficulty writing this book that was so important to him at that time. But this is the book I'm focusing on, The Razor's Edge, a book that's been compared to The Great Gatsby. I don't feel like it's much like The Great Gatsby, honestly, because The Great Gatsby, even though they both feature somebody coming back from wartime or from, some other life, The Great Gatsby focuses so much on the affair between Jay and Daisy. It focuses a lot on Daisy pursuing, I don't know. It's I just feel like these are very different books, honestly. This book is more slow-paced, maybe more realistic, and he really goes into every character very deeply in a way that you not only empathize, but you feel like these could be real people. So let's see. Yeah, he starts out with a quote. "The sharp edge of a razor is difficult to pass over. Thus the wise say, the path to salvation is hard." So it says that Larry is kind of the main character, but there's actually this other guy named Elliot Templeton. And Elliot is this older gentleman, and he's basically a socialite and a snob. And he is the uncle to, I think he's the uncle. He's either the uncle or the godfather to Isabel. And he really believes in, living the good life, right? And mingling with the aristocracy and wearing the best clothes and just being very high fashion, high society. And he's an American, but he goes to Paris. He basically lives in Paris and enjoys rubbing shoulders with the rich and famous. All in the best style, obviously. He's very sensitive to social norms and, just really what you can get out of life and appearances, not as much, trying to build relationships necessarily. So, I don't want to do any spoilers in this video. This is going to be spoiler free, but I'll probably read a few sections here that really stood out to me because I am really finding a lot of great gems in here already. Let me see. I'm going to just take it off screen for a minute and just check to make sure I don't show any spoilers. Okay, so there's this wonderful scene near the beginning where Isabel and Larry are kind of hashing out their differences, and Isabel just kind of goes full on American propaganda here. She's like, Europe's finished. We, that is America, we're the greatest, the most powerful people in the world. We're going forward by leaps and bounds. We've got everything. It's your duty to take part in the development of your country. And she goes on and on about his duty to be part of this great new country. I thought that was, it's a little bit, you might think it's over the top, but I think it's pretty indicative of a lot of people, how they think and feel. Maybe not explicitly, maybe they're not going to make these grand speeches about it, but I think there are people that feel that way back then and even today. Just trying not to show too much here. So he describes Larry as this lone wolf who doesn't want to run with the pack. That's a very quintessential American figure, very American. Let's see. I like this one. A bit of marital advice from the narrator. The fact was, I didn't know at all how deeply he loved her. Most people, when they're in love, invent every kind of reason to persuade themselves that it's only sensible to do what they want. I suppose that's why there's so many disastrous marriages. They are like those who put their affairs in the hands of someone they know to be a crook, but who happens to be an intimate friend, because unwilling to believe that a crook is a crook first and a friend afterward. They are convinced that, however dishonest he may be with others, he won't be so with them. Yeah. Ooh, microphone getting out of whack. Okay. So yeah. And then Elliot is just delightfully snobbish, critiquing the difference in Paris, in the roaring 20s versus 10 years before. This was not the Paris that he had accepted 30 years before as his spiritual home. This was not the Paris that good Americans went to when they died. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, it's just a very charming book, but also very serious. Surprisingly serious and deep. It's somewhere between Wodehouse and Fitzgerald. Like, it's not as serious and dire as Fitzgerald, but it's not quite as lighthearted as Wodehouse. So I'm enjoying it so far. Yeah, so that's what I'm reading right now. Let's see if I can switch over to the other screen. If you guys have any questions, comments, or anything that you'd like me to address, it's just really open today. I didn't have a set theme other than just general chit chat. But as we're just kind of hanging out, I'll do this A to Z book tag that I found. If I can pull it up. Let's see. I might have to actually add it to this. So just one moment. I need to add a window capture. And I need to add the A to Z book tag. Okay. And that's a little small. Oh. Okay, we'll just go for that. Yes, it really is a beautiful cover, this, The Razor's Edge. And this is actually a very fitting cover as well, because Larry was in the Air Force, I think. And he often dreams about when he was flying and that, like, spiritual sensation that he gets from flying. It's really cool. Hi, Nara. Yes, I am reading The Idiot. Rereading it. I first read it in, I want to say 2013. I think that's right. It's been a few years. And also Dostoyevsky's Notebooks. And I'll just show, like, I'm not gonna get too detailed here, but the notebooks are cool because it shows like characters he had in mind, little snippets of dialogue, character sketches, general outlines for what he had in mind. And actually, you could probably read this first if you wanted to, because he changed so much, or at least according to the introduction he did, it's probably not that spoilery. So I don't know. But yeah, I had mixed feelings about this book the first time, but the more I've thought about it since, it's just sort of soaked into my brain, and I actually think this is one of the best books I've ever read, but going back to it, I'll know for sure. I hope. Okay, so are you also reading The Idiot, Nara, and what do you think of it so far? So yeah, I'm gonna do this tag. I'm wondering if... Okay, I think that's pretty big. Let me see if I can make it a little bigger, because I know some people probably watch this on their phones. I'm not always so good at remembering that fact. I've got all these random toolbars here. I wonder if I can close those. That's better. All right, so this is the A to Z book tag. Just one I happened to find online. It's pretty old. It's like from 2013. I can link to it in the description of the video after we're done. I just thought I would choose something that was kind of long and just see how far we get. So by the way, if you want to play along in the description or in the chat, feel free. Because that would make it more interesting. Nara says, fascinated by the fact that Dostoyevsky was inspired by Don Quixote when he created the character of Prince Mishkin. Yeah, so I'm hoping that the introduction talks about that, and that maybe it'll come up in the notes. We'll see. I actually haven't read that one yet, embarrassingly to say, but it's on my list. One of those must-read classics. Okay, so author you've read the most books from. This one's pretty easy for me. I have read the most books from Agatha Christie, simply because the Hercule Poirot series is very long, and I've read probably 2/3 of it, maybe 3/4. I really enjoyed them. I read them when I was like in my early teens, and I just read like several books at a time a week. So I went through the series pretty fast. I also read Miss Marple and Tommy and Tuppence. I think I'm gonna make these bold so that I can see what's what. Okay. Or maybe I'll make my answers bold. I'm not sure if that's easier, but whatever. Blage says Balzac. Gina, I don't know if I said your name right, says good morning from South Korea. Hey, that's awesome. I didn't know I had any viewers from South Korea. That's so cool. Isaac Asimov and Bernard Cornwell, Steve King, Ian McEwan, and Guima Reyes Rosa. I'm not sure if I said that right. By the way, I'm just generally bad at pronunciations, but that's really awesome. I need to read Ian McEwan. I have never read any of his books, but I know that they're pretty well acclaimed. Frank says, Christie's autobiography was very interesting. She lived quite a life. Yes, there was that whole time when she disappeared, which was quite mysterious in itself. I should read her autobiography. I really love memoirs and biographies in general. Excuse me. Okay, best sequel ever. And there's going to be some lag here, so just feel free to keep answering previous questions if if I'm going too fast. I'll try not to go too fast. Best sequel ever. I haven't read a lot of books with sequels, mostly because I think they tend to show up more in genre fiction or more modern fiction. Although, maybe that's not fair. The Three Musketeers had several sequels. I guess you could say The Mysterious Island is a sequel to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And then, do you count like a series as a bunch of sequels, or is that a series? Well, when I first saw that question, I thought The Silver Chair from the Chronicles of Narnia, which I don't know if that really counts as a sequel or just another book in the series, but I'm going to put that down because it's my favorite book in the series since childhood. This is driving me crazy. Let me do that. Okay. How do you feel about sequels in general? Do you like standalone books or books that have to have a sequel? I kind of tend to prefer standalone books now, although I used to prefer series and sequels a lot. Curious your thoughts on that. A fan fiction, I guess, kind of fills the place of sequels too, if you're into that. Let's see. Paul says the Odyssey is kind of a sequel to the Iliad. I haven't read the Iliad, so I'm not really sure the relationship between those books, but it's still on my list. Currently reading, well, we already talked about that, so I'll just go ahead and put down what I'm currently reading. I should probably save as I go, otherwise I'm going to lose it. I just know I am. So, drink of choice while reading. Well, as you saw earlier, I pretty much drink tea just 24/7, so green tea especially, somehow green tea and reading just go really well. I'm seeing some more support in the chat for standalone books. An Elegant Defense, nonfiction about the immune system. Actually, that sounds really interesting, especially given current events. Pynchon. There is a YouTuber named R.C. Walden, and he's doing a Tough Books challenge. And for his tough book, or book that's difficult to get through, he's reading Gravity's Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon. So I take it that's a bit of a undertaking, a bit of a challenge. Water's always good. Northanger Abbey, I want to reread that one. I think I would like it now. See, I wasn't a huge fan of Jane Austen when I first read her, but I don't think I could appreciate some of the nuances, and especially Northanger Abbey, which is more satirical in parts. So that's cool. I need to reread that one, and I think I'd like it this time. Next question is e-reader or physical book? That might be going too fast. Paul says, I'm reading a biography of Edmund Spenser that wrote The Fairy Queen. That's another long book that I definitely want to read in the future. Coffee is great. I actually stopped drinking coffee like 2 to 3 weeks ago when I moved, because it's been something I was wondering if I could quit as a habit, right? And it's actually been surprisingly easy. I do drink black tea as a substitute in the morning just so that I'm awake for my 6 a.m. meetings. But yeah, I definitely miss coffee as like a treat. Like, I was gonna have coffee today, but it turned out I think what I had gone bad because I brought some instant coffee when I moved. So that was kind of a letdown, but I'm gonna have to get some coffee maybe this weekend. And yeah, so Gina, and let me know if I'm saying your name wrong, Gina. Guess I can't do two things at the same time. I mean, I'm kind of the same way. Like, I try not to eat and read at the same time because I don't know. I can't really, like, I might eat absent-mindedly, but I try not to do that. So yeah, I like to focus on the reading mostly. E-reader or physical book? I can go either way on this. What I do like about e-readers is I can add all the notes and highlighting I want, and it's just there. And I can come back to it later. I do use the library's e-books a lot nowadays, especially for like not public domain books, so more modern books. I still like physical books though, and I'm going to continue buying physical books because not only do I like the experience, but I just think it's good to have something. I think it's good to own it, honestly, because that way people can't take it away from you. I know it sounds kind of paranoid or something, but it's just, it's, I don't know. I think in an age where we're all doing streaming and everything's digital and nobody really owns anything, I think having physical books is important. So I would give a slight edge to that, but honestly, I do read a lot of ebooks as well. And I don't think I'm totally off on the paranoia because I was reading a book recently and it was the Viktor Frankl book, Yes to Life, which I did a video on, I think. Yeah. And what I didn't mention in the video is, like, in the beginning pages, it actually says that they changed some things that he wrote because it's no longer correct to say it or something, like some terminology he used, which was okay back in the, or which was accepted anyway back in the, I don't know, 40s, 50s, and is no longer accepted. So I don't know. When you're reading something someone wrote 60 plus years ago, you're gonna accept that, they wrote within the time that they lived in. And I don't think it's really cool to change stuff that they wrote and say that, they wrote that. But anyway, that's kind of a tangent. Oh, great. Cool. I got that right. Listen to audiobooks when cooking and eating. I want to get back into the audiobooks. I used to listen to them a lot. But I just, I'm not so good at multitasking anymore. I guess that's what it is. Yeah, when it comes to ebooks, it's kind of like reading a website. So I can see where it can be easy to lose focus, especially if there's if the chapters are really long, for example, it can be difficult to keep momentum when you don't have that physical element of turning pages and stuff. Oops, my mug here. Okay, so fictional character you probably would have dated in high school. probably could go a couple directions with this. I mean, I had a big crush on Sherlock Holmes for a while, which is kind of funny. Actually, I think I'd have to say, so I'm just gonna say, I'll just say Sherlock Holmes. I don't know. I just thought he was really cool. I had a huge Sherlock Holmes phase, which I did a podcast episode on that like a year or two ago, but maybe I should do a video on that. Darcy, okay. It's so funny because I read Pride and Prejudice after I read Sherlock Holmes, and you know how Sherlock Holmes is kind of jerky to everybody, like he's just kind of rude. Unfortunately, I didn't think Darcy was like that rude compared to Sherlock Holmes, so I think some of the story was a little lost on me. Yeah, that's kind of embarrassing. We've got one for I don't know how to say her name. The girl from Harry Potter, Rebecca from Ivanhoe. Yeah. Ebooks as a way to be more minimalist. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good way to, especially if, maybe it's not a book that you're super invested in, but you do want to have a copy of it. Ebooks are great. In Korea, audiobooks are not the norm. Interesting. That's really interesting. Because here, especially since Audible started on Amazon, I think a lot of people do use audiobooks. But I thought about getting Audible, but it's I don't know. It seems kind of expensive for me because I wouldn't be using it as much as a person should be using it. Paul says Carrie White. From which book? Is that from a Stephen King book? I'm probably way off base here. Let me know which book she's from. Mr. Rochester. Yes. I had the Mr. Rochester phase as well. Yeah. The funny thing is, I think if I read the book now, which I'm going to reread it soon, I don't think I would like him very much. But, let's see. Glad you gave this book a chance. Glad you gave... Oh, yeah. There's a lot of books I'm glad I gave a chance, actually. But the one that really jumps out to me is the picture of Dorian Gray. Sorry, I'm reading chats and I'm thinking about things. So, picture of Dorian Gray. Yes, I had a lot of misconceptions about this book going into it. Like, I didn't really... I don't know. I'm just glad I read it. So I read this a couple years ago. And it was very impactful to me. Like, I could really relate to Dorian in a very unexpected way, because it wasn't just that he wanted to be young and liked and everything. It was like he wanted to, like, save his innocence, like preserve his, choir boy look, right? I don't know. There's more to it than that, right? I think what I really liked about the book is that it was relatable, even though, it's set in the late Victorian era and there's all sorts of things that maybe don't, like, translate directly to modern day. But I really liked that book. I was surprised. It's one of my top 20, probably. Even though parts of it are very difficult to read because, he turns into a monster, basically. Boris Pahor, Necropolis. I wasn't a fan of Slovenian writing before I read it, and it opened a lot of doors. Isn't that great though when you find an author who opens up a genre or maybe a culture or country to you? That's really great. Yeah, I'm sure I could think of examples for that too, but hidden gems. I guess this is kind of similar, huh? Or is hidden gem more like nobody knows about this book? I guess that's what it's more like. A hidden gem book. I mean, I always think, well, it really depends, right? Because a hidden gem might be a hidden gem to you and to nobody else. It's, yeah, I guess it just depends. Like, I'm going to just say one that I really think is a hidden gem, or not really a hidden gem, but just a book that I really liked that is not as well known. It's called Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis. And this is an interesting book because people tend to be very polarized in their reactions to it. I think most people either get it and love it, or they don't get it and they hate it. And that's totally okay. I got it and I loved it and could really relate to the main character quite a bit. Again, kind of in an unfortunate way, because like Dorian Gray and stuff. But no, these are good books, right? Because they teach you about yourself and how you can mature as a person without going through some of these unfortunate scenarios that these characters go through. So Till We Have Faces takes place, like, it's in a fantasy world, but it's kind of ancient times, vague ancient times. Yeah, so vague ancient times. It's about these two princesses, I think, and one of them's they're half sisters or something like that, and one of them's beautiful and the other one's ugly, and it's the ugly sister who is narrating this story, and she really loves the beautiful sister, like as an older sister, and to the point of like obsession and overprotection and idolatry, in fact. So it's such an unusual topic for a book, but I could really find it, I really found it relatable and just quite vividly written. It's kind of gritty and the ending's very strange, but I really liked it. So yeah, always curious to see if people like that one or they don't like it. Buck says, I've heard of Faces as a retelling of an allegory. Sounds so heady, I've avoided it. It is supposed to be a retelling of Psyche and Cupid, but honestly, I didn't know anything about those mythological characters before I started it, and I still really liked it. There is another book by William Golding, the author of Lord of the Flies, and he wrote a similar book called what's it called? Anyway, I don't remember, but it's got a very similar plot or similar setup to this book. Anyway, I don't think you necessarily need to know the mythology to like this. It's just, it is very gritty, but very thought-provoking. So some mentioned in the chat here, Manual for Cleaning Women by Lucia Berlin and A Breath of Life by Clarice Lispector. and B.S. Johnson's The Unfortunates. Yeah, hidden gems. I don't know. Like, is it like the books that don't have any reviews on Goodreads? Maybe. I have had the fortune or misfortune of reviewing one or two books like that, but I don't know that they were gems, to be honest. Okay. Important moment in your reading life. Let me think about that for a minute. I would say I've had many important moments in my reading life. Oh boy. But the trouble is, when you ask the question, you just can't think of any. Let me look at something on this other screen real quick, and maybe it'll jog my memory. Because I do have a list of bookses. I have a list of books that changed my life, and they're called axes, or I call them axes. I'll show you here if I can find it. Okay, now I'll zoom up. This is my blog. Some people had mentioned they didn't know I had a blog, so you can find it at classicsconsidered.com. So I stopped having favorite books a few years ago, and now I just have axes. Well, what's an axe? A book must be the axe for the frozen sea within us. So it's just a book that made me think about something differently, changed my life, gave me a new idea, or something like that. So there might be something here that was a moment in my reading life. I mean, going back to Jane Eyre was probably the first classic I fell in love with. I'd read some Dickens before that, and I had been read some, quote, children's classics before, like The Secret Garden. But I became really immersed in Jane Eyre, and that was a very impactful novel on my life because, I was like, 12? I didn't understand the whole book, obviously. But it's to this day, it's one of the few books that has a truly strong female character. And, usually in media or in movies, the female character is very cardboard cutout, even if she's, quote, strong. Like, there's not a lot of nuance to that. She tends to fall into tropes. Jane Eyre is really, really a good character, and not, she really has aged well in terms of how she's a strong character. Yeah, so I'd have to go with that. Go back to the list. If I remember how to do this. Gina says, when I was 6, I read The Little Princess and knew the moment I read the first page, I fell in love with reading. Yes, that was also a story I read. I read an abridged version, but really love that story. Blanche says, No Longer Human, a Japanese novel. And then Buck is talking about his decision to leave his parents' religion and read nonfiction voraciously to figure out what was true and what was not. And Paul says, when I realized the greatest authors are artists. Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. let's see. Just finished. Well, I just finished Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders. And I will probably write a book review of this. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a video, but I'll try to write. I do plan to write a book review. So this is a more recent novel. I want to say 2015. Not sure if that's right. About Lincoln and the death of his son Willie, and sort of set in this fantasy between life and death, called after the Buddhist place, the Bardo. So that should be coming on the blog soon. Yes, it was a bloody. It was a buddy read with Blage. And honestly, I do think it's a good book to read with somebody else, because I think if you're reading it by yourself, it's hard to be able to, I mean, you definitely need someone to bounce ideas off of, because it's kind of like there's just a lot going on, and I don't know. I think it really benefits from discussion. Let's see, kinds of books you won't read. Yeah, so excuse me. Let's see, kinds of books you won't read. I don't really read. So I don't really read. There's two books that really jump out to me as books I don't read. Genre romance and pop historical books. And the reason for that, so, well, obviously, I'm not really into genre romance just because it's not my cup of tea. Pop history books, okay, some of them are fine and some of them I'll read, but if I open it up and it looks like they're trying to tell a story, but it's all nonfiction, and like the book is, I don't know, 400 pages long, for some reason I don't mind like actual academic history books, but the pop versions I just can't. It's just not, like, I've never even tried to read some of those. Well, I take that back. I did try to read, I don't know, 1776 or one of those. But, and I could be off base calling it pop history. I'm pretty sure they're well researched. It's just that they're marketed towards a, mass audience. And I find those actually harder to read than history books, but I'm probably just weird that way. And the other thing, along with the genre romance, any kind of gender violence / violence against children, like, I just don't do well with that. So those are the main ones. I mean, and it really just all depends on how graphic it is, but I'm a highly empathetic person, so reading books like that actually gives me, like, sometimes I get physically unwell from that, so can't go there. Let's see. Yeah, so some of the chat. Young adult. Yeah, I don't really read young adult, although I would read young adult if it sounded promising. Like, there's a book called Airborne by Kenneth Oppel. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And it's basically sort of a Jules Verne style book for children. I actually liked that book. So if it's the right young adult book, I would read it. But, it's not a genre I particularly gravitate towards anymore, or ever. Pop science. I can actually handle pop science, but I would always, like, be wary of the pop books, not because they're just, inaccurate or anything. If they've got good sources, then they're good, but I don't know. Actually, for a lot of things, you can just find articles online that tell you what you need to know when it comes to the nonfiction. But anyway, I do tend to prefer biographies and memoirs because at least with those, there's like this predefined timeline, the person's life, and they can't go on too many tangents. Although the Lawrence of Arabia biography I read, I think it's called Lawrence, the Life and Legend. No, it's called Hero. Let me see. Actually, can I pull that up here? Yeah, so Hero, the Life and Legend of Lawrence of Arabia. This book just kind of, like, it almost went into that zone I did not want to be in. Because you would think that, it's just a biography, so it's going to be pretty focused. But this guy, this Korda, he just went, like, deep into information that you probably didn't even want to know. It was a decent biography. It's not my favorite, but yeah, it was as close as I get to reading that kind of book. Let me go back to the list. Longest book you've read? I don't know. I guess The Lord of the Rings is probably the longest if you think of that as one book, which it was supposed to be. It's like 1,000+ pages. Took me like probably a year to read it. Well, at least half a year. I was having some reading difficulty when I read it, which didn't help. I had a phase when I just didn't have very good attention span, and unfortunately it coincided with reading The Lord of the Rings, and so it took me way longer than it normally would. But I'm glad I read it. It was the first book that made me love poetry because of the way he used it in the context of the story. And before that, I had always kind of turned up my nose at poetry, but I kind of fell in love with poetry through The Lord of the Rings, and then I explored the ancient Anglo-Saxon poems that influenced this book. Love those. And then just kind of branched out from there back to more, traditional poetry, or not traditional, but like more recent poetry. Blanche says encyclopedias. Yeah, that would be very long. Buck says Durant's Age of Faith and War and Peace. Yeah, I'm procrastinating mightily on War and Peace. Not because I don't think it'll be good, but just because I might need to take a small vacation to read it. Atlas Shrugged, says Paul. Yes. Was that the one I tried to read? I tried to read one of her books and bailed pretty fast. I did read Anthem, which is kind of similar, but much shorter. Pseudepigrapha of the Old Testament. I'll be honest, I don't even know what that means. Oh. Okay. So this would be books that are not canon, they're not, okay, I'm following now. Yeah, that would be a lot. The Old Testament is long enough. I'm reading it right. I'm rereading it right now, and I'm kind of wading through Leviticus, which, was very difficult. I've always found the Old Testament to be extremely difficult to read. But this would be certainly interesting. I guess for me, it would be daunting, absolutely daunting. And I've read, I guess I'm just going back, like I read the Old Testament in high school, and I think it was just very difficult at that time, so maybe now it'll be easier, but yeah. I finally have the Apocrypha too, which I'm sort of reading on the side. Oh, and I just realized that no one was able to see me Googling just now. So anyway, back to the book tag. Major book hangover because of book hangover. Okay, so they're saying like what caused you to like just be so taken by the book that you couldn't read anything else afterwards, that kind of thing. Oh, there's been quite a few books like that. Yeah. I think the one that comes immediately to mind would probably be, well, I can't remember for sure. I know that, so was it this year or the year before when I read Silence by Shusaku Endo? That book was quite a gut punch, and I spent a long time making my video for that, or videos, and I was just kind of left exhausted after reading the book and after making the videos. And I wouldn't say it was necessarily a book hangover. His other book called The Sea and Poison, that book was kind of traumatic, and that took me a while to recover from. So that was probably the most recent one. Actually, let me switch back to the blog real quick, not to linger too long on this question, but I'm curious about other book hangovers. Let me just whip through this list real quick, see if anything stands out. Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I don't have much difficulty moving on to the next book. I mean, Sherlock Holmes, probably. I remember after I finished the Sherlock Holmes series, I immediately tried to find like spin-off stories to read and stuff, so it actually took me a long time to move on from this series. So maybe that was another one. Yeah, The Sea and Poison. That was definitely one. Yeah. Okay. Pretty much it. Let's go back. Joseph says, I get burned out on certain authors and need to take a break from them. Is that a hangover? I mean, yeah, I guess it could be. I do tend to try to read by author, but at a certain point I just I've kind of got the idea of some person's perspective and just feel ready to move on. Recently, since I read a lot slower now, in part because reading things, like multiple things at a time, I probably don't experience that quite as much as I used to. Oh, let me write down my answer here. My keyboard is acting up, of course. Oops. Okay. Number of bookcases you own. I own 2 bookcases, and I have a few books on a rack behind me, but they're like computer books. So 2. My first bookcase, I'll never forget. It was from, actually, I've been through a couple of bookcases previously. My first bookcase was a bookcase from IKEA, and I think it's the one that is pretty popular. It's kind of tall and narrow, and that one served me well. And then I got a bigger bookcase that was black, but it looked dusty a lot, honestly. It did hold a lot of books, so that's when I started getting more books, mostly for birthdays and Christmas, because when I started out, most of the books I read were from the library or my parents bought them. But as far as my own books, I didn't have that many, except over years, Christmas and birthdays. I've eventually filled up that bookcase pretty well, along with like notebooks and things. And then at some point we got rid of that one because it needed to go, and because I was like doing remodeling and stuff, and also anyway, so the 2 that I have now are about a couple years old, and I decided to get real wood bookcases just because I think these will be my last ones, or at least I hope they are. They should hold up pretty well. But honestly, I will just put books like anywhere. So, let's see. One book you have read multiple times. Yeah, well, I think everyone knows, or most people by now, I've read Eugene Onegin many times. I've read Heart of Darkness several times. I guess that's more of a novella. I don't really do a lot of rereading. I wish I did, but being so slow, it's hard to find time to reread stuff. I'm trying to think if there's any others that Kidnapped. Yeah, I've read Kidnapped a few times because I really like that book. Kidnapped by Robert Louis Stevenson. I like the character development, the characters themselves, and it's an adventure story, and I always like those. Preferred place to read. I typically read in bed right before I go to bed, just because, I don't know, it's just a routine I have. Yeah, nothing really unusual there. I used to read on the bus when I was in college. I used to read everywhere, pretty much. But I don't know. It's better to read when you're in a quiet place. The chat says some books people have reread. Michener, Hawaii. Let me look that one up real quick. And Paradise Lost. And let's see. Kokoro from Natsume Soseki. Yeah, Joseph said mostly reads during business travel. Needless to say, it has been a light reading year. Yeah, I wondered about that too because I've actually been working from home since last fall, incidentally, before it became mandatory. And, for me, I always had to drive for my commute, but I can see where people that used that time, if they were on a train to read, it would be very difficult now to find that time. So, yeah, it's almost like you have to invent a new routine to let you do that, or do the audiobooks, I think, as you mentioned earlier. Quote that inspires you, gives you all the feels from a book you've read. Quote that inspires you. I used to save quotes more than I do now. I mean, I save them now, but I just put them into my book reviews. But I used to save quotes in like a notepad document. Okay, well, I think I've shared this one before somewhere, so this might be familiar. But it's one from Chesterton that I ended up framing because I just really liked it. It's, let's see if my keyboard will cooperate. All men, whoa. Yeah, keyboard not happy today. Okay, the mouse is not cooperating either. Anyway, the quote is, maybe I can type it, all men can be criminals if tempted. All men can be heroes if inspired. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to see if I can find it on Google and copy and paste it in, because this is not going well. I don't know why we're suddenly having issues with like everything. Well, anyway, I can't. It's not gonna work. Okay. Anyway, yeah. All men can be criminals if tempted. All men can be heroes if inspired. And my keyboard is still being a criminal. So we'll come back to that later. But yeah, do you guys have any good quotes that you like? I can't even remember what quote that was from. I want to say it was the book called Heretics by Chesterton, but I'm not sure if it was. I wonder if this is going to work yet. It's just very stubborn. Reading regrets. Well, I mean, I don't know if I have any reading regrets. Because, frankly, pretty much everything you read, you can benefit from in some way. Most books, like 99%. I mean, as long as you chose reasonably well. And even if you don't like the book, like, you can at least figure out why you didn't like it. And it gives you some contrast for other books. There we go. Save that before it's gone. I would say I always regret not finishing some books, but then I also regret finishing other books. So I'm not sure if that counts. Because who knows? I mean, I guess maybe not doing more book clubs in the past. The last 2 years, 3 years, I've been trying to read more with other people, whether that's like online read-alongs, maybe Zoom book clubs. Like I did one today. I did 2 today, which was awesome. And I just get so much more when I hear other people talking about books. So, not doing more book clubs in the past. Granted, I mean, you have to make sure you have time to commit to that. But if you can make the commitment, if other people can make the commitment, it's just really, really enriching. Yeah, Buck mentions he mentions a quote from Thoreau on how he went into the woods to live deliberately. Yeah. I was reading Walden. I should probably mention that I had stopped reading it just because I think I started some other books as I was like still in chapter 1, and I was reading Walden with a book club that I wasn't able to keep up with because it was just things just weren't aligning for me that month. So I'm going to go back to Walden. Have not decided when, but I plan to go back. Joseph says, biggest regret is forgetting much of what I read. Yeah. I didn't start writing book reviews regularly until 2010. Maybe 2009, technically. Somewhere in that zone. But I read a lot of books before that. I mean, probably more than I've read since. And I didn't write any reviews. I wrote some, but just like very short ones. So, Paul says, I regret that there's not enough time to read all the books I want. Yeah, me too. Like mathematically, if I look at my reading list and I factor out how long it takes me to read a book and how many years left are in my life and all the new books I'm going to find out about, I just know I'm not going to make it, which is really sad. But, oh well. I do tend to read spontaneously, which I think is okay, but not very good at meeting goals. Series you started and need to finish. All books are out in the series. Probably, like, I haven't read a lot of series recently, but I guess I'll put down the Horatio Hornblower series because I started it. I read like the first 2 books, Mr. Midshipman and Lieutenant, and did not get past that. That was back in high school though. I was like, I don't know, I didn't care for the writing style. It was very straightforward, but I was also having that attention span difficulty at the time, so that might have played into just a lack of interest, but I do want to finish this series. Three of your all-time favorite books. All-time favorite books. Yes. So we've talked about some of them already. Obviously Eugene Onegin, not to be a broken record, but yes. It's hard because, you know, if you haven't read a book in years, can you still say it's one of your all-time favorite books? I mean, I will put Kidnapped on there because I've read it many times, and I think it holds up well over rereadings. I love the friendship between the 2 main characters and how they go through so much conflict, but they're still friends. And it's just a really nicely crafted story with some Scottish history as well. So I do love that book. And I guess I'll throw in The Metamorphosis because that's another one I've read several times, which I forgot to mention earlier. And I don't really get tired of that story, which is kind of strange because it's a weird story and somewhat depressing, but it is an all-time favorite book. I feel bad because I always mention the same ones, but I guess that's what makes them all-time favorites, right? Yep. The Thomas Covenant series. Shakespeare. I'm reading chats here. Cusk's Outline series. Some of these I've not heard of. Jayber Crow is on my list as one to read. I've had a couple people asking me to read Wendell Berry. So I need to do that. I need to get on it. Yeah. Some more favorites from the chat. No Longer Human, Beckett's Trilogy, and Berlin Alexander Plots. And then also someone says that their favorites are nonfiction. Yeah, I mean, there's nonfiction books I absolutely love too. I thought The Diary of Anne Frank was incredible. I'd probably put that on my list of nonfiction favorites. Also, well, similar topic, The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. I haven't read that for a long time, but it made such a big impression on me. I'm trying to think. I think there was, well, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'd put Shackleton's books in there because I wouldn't say I love them for the writing style or anything. They're just interesting books. Oh, Seven Pillars of Wisdom. Yeah. Lawrence of Arabia's memoir. Yep. A Hiding Place comic, like in a comic book format. That would be interesting. Yeah, I remember I read it when I was a child, and of course it was very traumatic for a child. But I mean, it was inspiring too. And Anne Frank too, like just imagining, especially having been at home ourselves for several months, just imagining, like, you can, when you read that, you totally understand how there was so much tension between the families and within the families. And it really, and yet she continues to have this zest for life and just a beautiful, enthusiasm about things. I was really touched by The Diary of Anne Frank. Unapologetic Fangirl For. Okay, well, I don't really have fandoms anymore, I guess. I mean, I'm still a fan of Sherlock Holmes, but I don't like fangirl anymore. I guess I'll put that down here. Sorry, I'm saying a lot now because I feel like my voice is going. But we're almost at the end. Trying to think if there's anything else that I'm a fangirl for. I just, like, in general, I like late Victorian writing, not for the datedness of it, but just, it's, the way they write has always been a big fan of that. And, especially like the speculative fiction like H.G. Wells and some of the Arthur Conan Doyle stories. They just really good at creating this atmosphere, and the dialogue's usually very witty, and the characters are just modern enough that you can relate to them, but they're still characters from that era. So, oops. I'm gonna have to, yeah. Yeah. So, going to keep going here. Very excited. Wait, let me read some chats here of Unapologetic Fangirls and Boys for W.J. Zabald, yeah, and Louis L'Amour. I really want to read. I think I got one of his books from the library once, but I didn't make it through. Still, I do want to read Louis L'Amour because I had a Western phase in high school. Well, what happened was my family was watching a lot of old Westerns, and at first I thought I was not going to like them, whatever. But I think we watched, the one that really drew me into Westerns was actually a comedy called Along Came Jones. And it's just a complete satire on the Western genre, but it was very charming. I think it stars Gary Cooper, if I'm remembering correctly. Let me double check that. Along Came Jones. Yeah, Gary Cooper, Loretta Young. Anyway, I just thought that was such a fun movie. And so after that, I started watching the, quote, real Westerns and really got into it through that era, I suppose. High Noon, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. That's a good one. And then kind of branched from there into the TV Westerns of the 60s. So, yeah, I was really obsessed with that for a while. Has anyone in the chat read True Grit? Because that's one I want to read. But I have not yet tackled it. I haven't seen any of the films either, for that matter. Okay, so very excited for this release more than all the others. When it comes to new releases, I just don't follow new releases that much, with a few exceptions. But yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to just say not applicable, because usually what happens is I'll find out that something was released a month ago, and then I'll try to find a copy and realize that the library list or the library wait list is super long. It's very rare that I'm gonna anticipate the release of something. I guess, yeah, sorry, I'm just humming and awing. No, I can't really think of anything right now. So, okay. Worst bookish habit. Probably starting books and not finishing them. Because I do read very spontaneously. I'm sure I've said it many times, but I have a biography on Tesla, which I need to finish. I really like it, but it is very dry. And I really have to force myself to finish books like that. But I know it's good, and I'm learning, and it's not completely boring. It's just takes some effort. So yeah, starting books and not finishing them, it's become more of a problem recently. I used to just read one book at a time, but now I tend to read multiple. Because, I don't know, just a bad habit, I guess. Maybe that's the real problem here. Okay, in the chat, people are saying True Grit is a favorite movie, the John Wayne movie, and its writing style is unforgettable. Joseph says no interest in keeping up with new releases. Likes the remake of True Grit. Blodge says the Lost Writings of Franz Kafka is getting released by New Directions in October. That's exciting. Like, I am really excited about that. Oh, I've got to look that one up. I'm a huge Kafka fan. Let me go back here. Lost Writings of Franz Kafka. Oh, wow. I had no idea this was a thing. Okay, well, we're going to sign up for that one. 74 pieces, lost to sight for decades, and 2 of them have never been translated into English before. Also, what a cool cover. That's just really nice. Huh. I mean, I don't know if I should be so gleeful because he wanted his writings to be burned, but I'm very excited. The other thing is I recently discovered that somebody published his law writings. What is it called? The Office writings, yeah. So any Kafka fans out there, I don't know if you read this. I definitely want to read this. I know it seems really obscure. You know, it's like, I guess, reading Kafka's emails, essentially. But I really want to read this too, just to see what it was like and how much of that might have influenced his writing. So, cool. Very exciting. Just in time for birthdays and Christmas. So, yeah, does anyone else have any bad bookish habits? X marks the spot. Start at the top left of your shelf and pick the 27th book. Oh boy. Okay, I'm gonna go do that. I'll be right back. I'll try to be quick. Alright, so it's now really dark in here, but let's see if it'll show up. Wait a minute. Oh, there we go. Okay, The Professor by Charlotte Bronte, which I'm disappointed because I didn't like this book. Some people really liked this book though, so don't take my word for it. This was Bronte's first novel and very much a precursor to her novel Villette, which I think is a superior novel, but some people would say the opposite. So, yeah, I read this fairly recently and I just didn't like it. So, yeah, the 27th book. So, chat mentions dog earring pages and mind wandering but continuing to read. Okay, I do relate to the mind wandering thing. I can be reading and like see every word, but then I'm thinking about something completely different. So I usually go back and reread it. That's why it's really important for me to be in a focused environment. Otherwise, I can very easily get distracted, even with my own thoughts. Your latest book purchase. So I think I already showed the books I purchased in a previous video, did a quick book haul. I'm also going to be ordering Cosmic Comics by Italo Calvino, which I haven't purchased this yet, but I'm about to. And also Kristen with an L. This book, Kristen Lavron's Daughter. I'm going to be ordering this one. And that'll be very soon. I'm not sure if I'm getting these off Amazon or eBay. So I'm kind of just sort of figuring that out still. Bye, Blaj. Thanks for joining. Joseph says, latest book purchase is an autobiography of Bill Bruford. Buck says, obey little, resist much, remembering Ed Abbey. Paul says, I bought nearly 30 Folio Society books during their sale. That's awesome. Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing what I think they release new books every quarter, if I'm right. So we'll see, maybe there'll be something that catches my eye. I'm trying to not be too spendy with the books, because I have so many I need to read that I already own. So yeah, it's a good time to use ebooks for me. Okay, last one, the ZZZ Snatcher book, last book that kept you up way late. A book that I stayed up late to read. Well, okay, I know that I stayed up late reading A Pale View of Hills, and the reason I remember that is because I was really freaked out by that book because it's a ghost story, but I didn't know when I started it that it's a ghost story. And so I was completely freaked out at night with this unexpected ghost story. Another book that I really don't stay up that late anymore. I'm getting old at heart and just can't do it. But also I have to get up really, really early. So I'm sure there have been others. Yeah. American Dirt, 1 a.m. That sounds like a page turner. I'm trying to think the latest I've ever stayed up reading a book. Not that late, honestly. Maybe 1 a.m., but maybe not even that. I don't know. Usually I fall asleep way before that. Okay, well, that's the end of the A to Z reading tag. That was really fun. I enjoyed reading you guys' answers. So maybe we'll do something similar in the future. Maybe a shorter one. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'm probably gonna wrap it up here. If you have any last moment thoughts, questions, or comments, let me know in the chat. And if you have ideas for future live streams, let me know. Do you even like live streams? I got mixed responses on that question when I had a poll out a few weeks ago. I guess last month already. Maybe it was the month before. Time's really flying. Yeah, I enjoy doing the live streams, but I'm hoping to get a second desk once I can get a second desk. There seems to be a bit of a shortage right now of at least the desks that I'm looking at. So hopefully more live streams in the future, but I'll just have this all set up and ready to go. Yeah, maybe we should do a book club someday, like maybe a short story or something where we like have a meeting or something. I don't know if you guys use Zoom or Hangouts or what. That might be fun. I like short stories because there's usually a lot you can talk about, but it really is a low reading commitment, and it's just good for those with the busy schedules. So that might be something we do in the future. I don't know. Let me know if that would interest you. All right. Oh, Hurricane Laura. Yeah. I hope you are staying safe down there. The pictures just look awful. As for me, things are mostly still closed. Well, not closed, but like things are very limited still in occupancy and openness. Some things are still closed. We're planning to go to the ocean soon when our schedules align, so that should be fun. But yeah, it's just there's not much to do, honestly, because the movie theaters are closed and everything's half occupancy or whatever. So we're just finding other things to do. The other thing we could do, because as you're mentioning connection speeds, we could still do a book club. We could do it just on YouTube with the chat. That would be fine. I don't have a Discord. I'm not even sure if audio is that much better than video. It should be a little bit better, but we could do YouTube. Just have it in the chat. Yeah, actually, if anyone has any short stories they'd recommend, we could plan on that. For me, I would say obviously something everyone can get easily, so it has to probably be public domain, something you can find online. I don't know. We'll have to see. You could do a poll for the book. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll come up with like a few ideas. We'll make them public domain or at least easy to find. We could even, I don't know, poetry. I don't know if people like poetry. I like poetry, but I think short stories are a little bit better for discussion because it's just, there's this like more guidance for discussion with those. So yeah, maybe I will do that. And we could vote on an option, and I guess we could give people a week to read the story, maybe a little more time if for the first one. We'll see. All right, so I'm going to be signing off here. Thanks again, everybody, for joining. This was so much fun, and hope to see you next time. Stay safe. Bye.